10,000 dead always join our conversation when we open our mouths, wrote Austrian novelist Hugo von Hofmannsthal in 1925. Millions of microbes engaged in mating join our conversation as we speculate in our project. Building on a premise of biosemantician Morten Tonnesen, we have bridged human phonemes with microbial behavior, enabling the phonemes to become internal to the Umwelt of microbial mating. Here on the right side, the yellow part represents human habits, the green part represents salivating, and the blue part represents circadian rhythm, indicating the external modulators of the extremely sensitive oral microbiota. In the left graph, you can observe the fluctuations of microbial mating as a result of circadian variations in breathing and salivating. Some genera begin mating during human sleep, while others die off. Being awake, in general, signifies to the microbiota that it's time to mate. In glossolalia, a human recalls past lives or spirits in uttering speech-like sounds. In our setup, only the speaker's repetitive utterance of phonemes enables the microbes to recognize the difference between a pheromone and a mate. This setup follows François Caudron's 2014 milestone experiment on microbial memory. Thus, speaking becomes an echolalia with the speaker communicating through the mating of the oral microbes and their ecology. An ethical core question is whether exploring their mating for enhanced cognition is pleasurable for the microbes. Spiess argues that cells do not possess queer identities and that microbial pleasure may not be linked to mating and reproduction. Killing microbes during teeth brushing and bread baking is acceptable. For biologist and artist Bela Bettridge, however, the question of whether microbes are capable of experiencing pleasure remains unclear. Alexander Banjin.
I think we missed that slide.
What? Okay. I apologize, but this is early morning. Maybe it would have much better worked in the evening. So anyway, Alexander Banjin wrote a milestone paper in 2014 speculating whether microbes please humans by implementing human rituals for microbial breeding needs. A relevant speculation in our project then is whether the microbiota implements certain human glossolalia for their mating needs. In conclusion, Alphabetic Pleasures implements a dialogue between three levels. The Umwelt level with echolalia, considering causality, pleasure, and ecology. The spiritual level with glossolalia. And the paranoia level, considering patternicity and hallucination, which leads to the machine learning part of the project, which is now explored by Emanuel, but first we have to see the video, I think.
Let's try.
The performance Alphabetic Pleasures, When Signs Mate, explores the complex connection between human language and the natural world, specifically in relation to the threat that patriarchal capitalism poses to both language and microbiota diversity. In this performance, artist Lucy Strecker, a collaborator on the project, adorns the haunting costume of a bride. In the midst of the pandemic, when both human and microbial mating were disabled, with the aid of technology, she breaks down barriers between her phonemes and her microbiota.
You say yes to a digital kiss. to a digital mate.
Through previous experiments, our group had already discovered that certain vocal sounds were more effective in provoking microbiota mating than others. The installation responds to the artist's voice spectrograms, specifically triggering the release of microbial pheromones that influence her oral microbiota's mating behavior. The microbes respond to the added pheromones as if they were potential mates, but eventually realize they are not. An AI system monitors the microbial mating and seeks to detect patterns between the microbial mating attempts and the noisy and tonal parts of the phonemes. Iteratively, the AI system proposes fresh phonemes to the artist until the essence of both pheromone for the oral microbes and phoneme for the artist loses its function as signifier. Ultimately, the artist transcends conventional language and expresses herself by glossolalia through the realm of microbial mating. Beyond functional language, in Alphabetic Pleasures, when signs mate, language and nature meet halfway. As such, it progresses from a surreal beginning, where, as André Breton stated, words engage in love, to a post-human perspective, where words engage in physical mating, delving into the pleasures and needs of both humans and non-humans, while striving for a tangible form of communication.
In search for these patterns, we exposed microbial cell cultures in our lab to vowels and consonants, observing their mating throughout a period of 48 hours. What we observed in our experiments are that the tonal aspects or parts of our human voice are accelerating or fostering microbial mating in our mouth. Based on these findings, we integrated in our installation a voice split. So we are splitting the human speech input into the vocal parts, as well as the timbral parts, as well as the alphabetic parts of the voice. And here already visualizing a tendency how they correlate with cell extinction and cell mating. Normally, the reduction cycle of Saccharomyces cell cultures, which are around 4% of our oral microbiome, take around 4 hours. They normally, under standard Umwelt conditions, reproduce asexually under certain phonetic or general Umwelt conditions, reproducing through sexual mating. As 4 hours is a rather long time for challenging the phonetic structure we already know and search phonemes in between, we integrated deep learning into our system and used our lab data to establish a latent space, a visual latent space about microbial cell images connected with our lab data to result in a latent space of microbial mating through the parameter of optical density. So it's a multidimensional space, and from every position in this space, there are around 512 directions to move to. we as humans are socialized and trained and conditioned to specifically reproduce or focus on the use of 44 phonemes. So within our project, we use a physical voice articulator called pink trombone to also search the space outside of our usual use of the vocal tract. So what you can see here is the IPA, International Phonetic Alphabet. It charts around 107 phonetic sounds in a variety of variations covering most of the languages we speak today. But within our project, it was very important to also search new phonemes in between the structure and outside of the structure, and find a way to not stick to the structures we have, but think about what kind of phonetic utterances would create a different relation with our oral microbes, and maybe find a symbiosis between microbial mating in our mouth and phonetic utterances. So all of this results in a ritual of search, a circular search of a reinforcement learning, observing the projected growth of microbes in our mouth, and at the same time adapting the parameters for the vocal articulator, proposing new kind of phonemes that maybe if we integrate them into our phonetic alphabet would result into a different relation with the microbes in our mouth. Thank you.
Since we have 2 minutes to go, I'm more or less serving as a kind of, let's say, ad hoc advisor to the project, a little bit joining the group from time to time from a media philosophical perspective. What I find interesting in this project is it draws attention more to orality rather to scripted language. We have an acceleration of scripted language in code, in the acceleration of cognitive capitalism, with everybody speaking airport English and so on, and also diminishing the very complexity of different languages. So there is a kind of disappearance in terms of ecolinguistics, how languages disappear, and the correlation that is not causal, but it's possible that there is a correlation to how also the oral microbiome disappears. So I find this very interesting to draw attention to the orality. So this is something I like a lot. It's also about not to distinguish kind of abstract signified from a kind of concrete material signifier, but to rather think of sign relationships that are material, which is coming back to more Aristotelian or Peircean kind of sign systems, instead of a kind of Saussurian kind of split, where I have both, a kind of dualistic thinking of dividing the sign and the signifier. So just key issues to think about media philosophy behind that, and also to disentangle pleasure from reproduction. This is also a kind of very important feature when it comes to queerness and in terms of trans-species relationships. I think we're out of time, so thank you.